Childhood ceiling fan. This is a term that in the fan community is defined as a ceiling fan of a particular type that is held nostalgic by either a group of people or an individual as they saw it or owned it at some point throughout their childhood. Now this is a pretty wide term. It can be a fan that you saw frequently, say at a friend's house or a public place that you went to often as a kid, or it could possibly be something you just saw once or twice and thought was rather cool. And now that most of us fan collectors are adults, we oftentimes have more of a desire to get childhood fans, even if they aren't of the highest of quality. Certain people out there have childhood fans that they feel the need to get every single one of and screw over every single other collector by any means necessary if it just means they can get one more of them, even though they already have at least 50. But I digress. Childhood ceiling fans are different for every single collector, and no collector has the exact same list, though certainly some collectors have some in common. And this is going to be my list that I'm going to share with you viewers. I'm sure most of you already know at least some of the ones on this list, so we'll start out with what's probably the most obvious one, and this is my number one childhood fan as well, white 42-inch Hunter low profile, the early version with the narrow switch housing. This has always been my number one childhood fan. I adore those fans, and I currently have two of them, and even though I haven't installed either one of them in a while, I do still really like them. And in more recent times, I got a hold of an antique brass one, a polished brass one, and another white one that's 52 inches in diameter. And again, they're all the type that have the narrow switch housing. I also have a bit of childhood nostalgia for the ones with the wide switch housing, the 90s version, as two of those were installed in my cousin's house, if you remember when I made a video of the fans in their house many years ago. However, because the 80s version was installed in my house, I definitely am more partial towards that version, also since it's significantly less common in the wild. So, my house did originally have a white 42-inch Hunter low profile installed. That house had a white 42-inch Hampton Bay Littleton in my room, the polished brass 52-inch Crest Hugger in the spare bedroom, the Quorum Remington in the master bedroom, and then down in the kitchen was a white 42-inch Hunter low profile. And even as a kid, the low profile in the kitchen was always my favorite fan in the house. I don't know exactly what it was, but something about that fan always drew me to it. So, the thing is, some people like to change and update their house to make it look more modern. Some people may do it just because they're simply bored with the current design of their house. Other people's houses may as well be a time capsule. Nothing changes in 20 years. You go to their house in 1992, then it's the exact same in 2012, and then it's the exact same in 2023. My parents were not like that, though. They constantly liked to change things. They constantly liked to update. So, I want to say in 2008 or 9, I believe it was 2009, but I'm not entirely sure, my parents were updating the kitchen. They repainted the walls, I believe they may have redone some of the cabinets, and of course they replaced the ceiling fan. And that is when the brushed nickel Hunter Stratford was installed, which is another childhood fan of mine. Don't love those as much, but still, I do like them. Have a soft spot for them. So yeah, that fan went up, and the low profile came down. And my dad knew I liked that fan, so he kept it like all together. He didn't like put it out on the curb like he probably otherwise would have, because he knew I liked that fan, so he put it in storage. And something else I forgot to mention up until now about this fan is it had a basic Hunter four-arm light kit. Basically Hunter's equivalent of the Casablanca K4, except the arms are straight, not bent 45 degrees. And this light kit had 4 light shades on it. that I've talked about this before, but this particular type of light shade, for the life of me, I cannot find any replacements for. The reason being is that many years ago, not long after the fan was taken down, one of them unfortunately shattered, meaning that there was only 3 left. And ever since that happened, I have been trying to find a replacement, but I have never, ever been able to precisely duplicate it. I've never been able to find an exact duplicate, no matter how hard I've searched. I came very close one time. I found a set of 4 that was almost identical, but there was still just the slightest difference, so a little strange. But anyways, back on track here. So that fan was put away into storage. And then, probably only 2 or 3 years later, in 2011, they just decided to renovate the whole downstairs. So the kitchen, all the walls got knocked down, all the flooring got uprooted and redone, everything. And then the Hunter Stratford also came down. Now, as a little kid, I was always a little salty about this, because what it was is the plan originally, because the old design of my house was that the kitchen was at the rear. The kitchen was at the rear. And then it jutted off to the left side a little bit, and then beyond there was the patio. So the idea at first was to expand the kitchen over where the old patio was so that it could connect to the dining room and the family room and, you know, like open up the house a little more. And and with this idea, my parents thought, oh, maybe we could install a second ceiling fan here. Because I remember when they told us, oh, we're going to redo the entire downstairs, I thought, okay, but is the fan going to stay? And they said, yeah, in fact, we might even install 2 fans in the kitchen now. And that got me excited. But then, not long before construction started, they talked to some, I don't know, interior decorator, and she came up with the idea that instead of building out in the rear, they could not build out, but rather completely rearrange the rooms as it was. So the kitchen went from the rear to the middle, the dining room went from the middle over to the end, the living room mostly stayed the same. And the closet got moved, the pantry, everything just like got completely uprooted and changed around. And the current kitchen, as it stands today, you know, like 12 years later, has no fan in it. It has these 3 hanging lights over the stove, but no fan is installed. So, and they didn't tell me about this until after construction happened. So, of course, I was excited about this, and then I see it, and there's nothing there. I was, of course, infuriated. Really, I don't think it's more so because, I mean, it was definitely as a kid, not a little kid, but a kid, it was definitely annoying to see that there was no fan there. But above all else, I think I was just mad that my parents lied to me. I don't think they did it intentionally, but like still, it was rather annoying. In fact, I think it was that exact same leverage that convinced them to let me install a fan in the hallway, the bathroom, more ones in my bedroom, and in the garage. Yeah, so at least something good came out of it. And one other thing worth mentioning, and if you dig through the old videos on my Waluigi Man and Bittersweet Hero channels, you can probably still find them somewhere, is that the original Hunter low profile fan, somehow during construction, things got mixed up and some of the parts were lost. I don't know how it happened, but some of the parts got lost. The motor housing and the big mounting plate were lost, and so was the light fixture. The motor, the blades, and the light shades, the 3 of them that were still intact, however, remained. So it's like, well, shit, what do we do now? It's an incomplete fan. I can't do anything with it. So I remember, this was probably this was 2012, late 2012. I remember looking everywhere, trying to find them. I searched the whole house multiple times. They were nowhere to be seen. They must have just like gotten thrown out in construction somehow. So then it became time to try and find replacements. So I scoured everywhere, and of course this was before I was involved in the fan community, so I couldn't just like go on there and ask. So I was just like, I didn't know what to do. I just scoured the internet and hoped for the best. Then came the fateful day that I visited a Habitat for Humanity restore for the very first time. And lo and behold, they actually had a white 42-inch Hunter low profile 1980s version. And of course, I bought it, brought it home, and voila, the fan was now complete. Or rather, I had another one that was complete. So that's just a little bit of the backstory there. And eventually I was able to find that Hunter Light Kit too. That wasn't until years later. That was I got that off of a low profile original that I bought in 2019, I believe. So slowly but surely I have been able to rebuild and recreate that fan. And I still have the original motor. Bearings in it are terrible, but I still have it. And I still have the original blades. Irons are pretty out of clock, but I do still have them. And then I also have parts for it, as well as a second one that's complete. So, all worked out. And whenever I get a house of my own, that is undoubtedly the fan that is going in the kitchen. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't care how many comments I get about how, oh, you could put something so much better in there. Like, nope, that is what is going in the kitchen. Kiss my ass. So, that's the story about my #1 childhood ceiling fan, the Hunter Low Profile. That story went on a bit longer than I expected, so I do have some more stories. However, I think I'm going to save those for a part 2, so stay tuned for that. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later.